Welcome back, friends, to SpeakNest English Podcast Zone, the place where English becomes your friend, not your fear. This is episode 44, and today we're talking about something important for real conversations. How to express your opinions in English. Whether you're agreeing, disagreeing, or giving your thoughts on food, movies, politics, or life. Today's episode will help you sound natural, polite, and confident. Let's begin.
Okay, let's dive right in. We all kind of walk around with a head full of thoughts, right? Beliefs, feelings about, well, pretty much everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that internal chatter and being able to actually share that, what's going on inside, that's so fundamental to how we connect.
Exactly. And you sent over some really interesting source material that zeroes in on expressing opinions. So for this deep dive, our mission is basically to unpack that, pull out the core ideas, and, help you feel a bit more confident sharing your views.
We're going straight to the material you provided, see how it frames this pretty essential skill.
Right. So let's start where your material does. The absolute basics. What is an opinion? How does the source actually define it for us?
Well, the source keeps it remarkably simple, actually. Up front, it just defines an opinion as basically what you think or believe about something. That's it, your personal take.
Okay. And it gives those pretty relatable examples, like that classic one. I think chocolate is better than vanilla.
Yeah, that one. Or maybe slightly more complex. In my opinion, online classes are more flexible.
Gotcha. But
the key thing here, and a source really hammers this home, is how personal these thoughts are. The material says it's straight out. Unlike a fact you can check, there's no real right or wrong with an opinion.
Oh, okay.
It just comes purely from your viewpoint, your own experiences, maybe your values, that sort of thing.
So it's less about stating some kind of universal truth and more about just saying your truth.
Yeah.
It's firmly in subjective territory then.
Precisely. Yeah, that distinction from, verifiable facts is crucial, and your source material really lays that groundwork firmly before it moves on.
Okay, that makes sense. So we get what an opinion is according to these sources. It's that personal subjective viewpoint. But why does learning to actually express these thoughts effectively matter? What's the practical payoff the material points to?
Well, the source highlights its role in basically social engagement. It says pretty directly that knowing how to share your opinion helps you participate. Yeah. Helps you join in different kinds of conversations.
Right. It's like your ticket to joining the discussion, isn't it?
Yeah.
The material actually lists specific places this comes up. Everyday chats, more formal discussions, even debates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it. I mean, whether it's just a casual chat about ice cream flavors like the chocolate to vanilla thing,
yeah,
or a slightly more structured discussion like about online classes, sharing your opinion is, well, it's how you contribute, right? It shows you're engaged. It lets other people understand where you're coming from. The source directly links being able to do this to being a more active participant in the world around you. It's about adding your voice to that, collective conversation.
So the source seems to frame expressing opinions less about needing to be right all the time and maybe more about just being present in the dialogue. Being understood.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Okay, so just to quickly recap from the sources you shared for this deep dive, we've seen an opinion defined as your personal thought or belief. It's distinct from fact, no universal right or wrong.
Right, subjective.
And crucially, the material stresses that being able to articulate these personal views is pretty essential for engaging with others, whether it's just casual talk or something more structured like a debate.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that your own perspective is valid and understanding how sharing it helps you connect.
Okay, so this brings up something fascinating. Thinking about the source's emphasis on opinions being personal, subjective, with no definitive right or wrong. If expressing opinions is really about sharing your subjective truth, and if there isn't that objective right or wrong standard, what does that suggest about how we should maybe listen to or engage with opinions that feel really, really different? Maybe even ones that feel fundamentally wrong to us. How should we approach those? Here to sift through your sources and, pull out the really useful bits just for you. And today, we're looking at something super practical, especially if you're learning English or maybe just want to communicate a bit more clearly. It's about expressing opinions.
That's right. Yeah, we've got some examples here, and they're really focused on, language you can actually use. Our goal, just find those simple, effective ways for you to share what you think.
Yeah.
Because being able to state your viewpoint clearly, well, it's fundamental, isn't it, for good communication.
Huh.
In this deep dive, we're zeroing in on some really common starting phrases. They're right here in the source material.
Exactly. The source gives us this great list. It's basically, how do you start your sentence when you want people to know, hey, this is my opinion.
Right, flagging it up front.
So the phrases themselves are pretty straightforward, things you'll definitely hear. We've got, I think,
I believe.
in my opinion, from my point of view. And as far as I'm concerned...
Simple stuff, really.
Yeah, simple but powerful. And the source gives examples right away. Let's take the first one. I think learning English is fun.
Okay, yeah. And what's really interesting there is how much that little phrase, I think, is actually doing.
Yeah.
By starting off like that, you're basically telling your listener, okay, what follows is my view.
Right.
It's personal. It's not necessarily a hard fact.
That's such a key point. It frames the whole thing. It's not just stating an idea. It's setting the stage.
Exactly. It manages expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of invites discussion, doesn't it? Instead of just laying down a fact that someone might feel they can't argue with.
Totally. It makes it easier for someone to say, oh, really? Why? Or maybe, interesting. I actually find it kind of challenging.
Precisely. It opens up the conversation.
Okay, let's grab another one from the source here. This one's slightly different. From my point of view, traveling is the best teacher.
Right. Now, phrases like, from my point of view, or as far as I'm concerned, sometimes they might feel like they lean a bit more on personal experience, you know?
Yeah, like it's rooted in your specific journey.
Maybe. And perhaps, I believe, has a touch more conviction behind it sometimes. But, and the source is quite clear just listing them, the main job is the same for all of them.
Oh, okay.
They clearly mark what you're saying as opinion. Fundamentally, they're all tools doing that same core task.
Gotcha. So knowing the phrases is step one, but actually using them, that's where it clicks for you.
Right.
And the source actually suggests trying one out loud.
Which is a great idea, actually. It helps embed it.
So here's one for you listening. The source suggests trying this specific one. I believe everyone should learn a second language.
Go on, try saying it.
Yeah, just say it out loud. I believe everyone should learn a second language.
Let's see. Just vocalizing it starts to make it feel a bit more natural, less like you're reading from a script.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, knowing and, feeling comfortable using even just one or two of these, it makes a real difference.
Ouch.
In conversations, maybe work meetings, just chatting, you feel more confident jumping in.
They're just basic tools, really, but essential for clear, more open dialogue.
And maybe taking that a step further, connecting it to something bigger for you to think about. Well, expressing your opinion. It's not just the words like, I think, or in my view, is it?
No, you're right. It's more than that.
It's actually taking the step, isn't it? Sharing your perspective.
It's an action, a small act of maybe vulnerability or just participation.
Yeah. And think about how using one of those little phrases actually changes the dynamic. Compare saying, I think traveling's the best teacher versus just stating, traveling is the best teacher.
Right, like it's an established fact everyone agrees on.
Exactly. How does adding that little opinion marker change how others might react? Or even how you feel putting your idea out there?
That's a really interesting angle. It's subtle, but the impact on the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth thinking about how it shifts things.
Absolutely. So think of these phrases as, I don't know, your conversational toolkit.
Good way to put it.
Practice them, use them. You'll probably find yourself sharing what you think with, a lot more confidence.
Definitely give it a try.
And that wraps up this deep dive.
Cutting through the noise again.
Getting you straight to the core insights.
Yep. Today we've been digging into some interesting notes and articles. They're all about expressing opinions.
And specifically, how to do that effectively in English. Lots of practical stuff in there.
Right. So our mission, as always, is to pull out the really useful bits for you from all this material.
Think of it like a shortcut, getting you the key tools for this specific communication skill. Fast.
Exactly. We want to give you things you can actually use. Practical tools. And the sources had a lot on one specific area, how to agree with someone.
That's right. I mean, the big topic is opinions generally, but there was a decent chunk just on, showing you're on the same page.
Politely, yeah. Sometimes you just want to signal clearly, hey, I'm with you on this.
And it's not always just about saying yes. The sources suggest how you say it matters.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What specific phrases did the source material pull out for agreeing politely?
Well, it starts pretty straightforward. There's the classic, I agree with you.
Can't get much clearer than that.
Yep. Simple, direct. No confusion there.
Okay.
Then there's that's true, which is interesting. I mean, the source kind of positions it as validating the accuracy of what was said.
Ah, okay. So it's like confirming the factuality of their point. Less about your personal feeling maybe and more about the truth of it.
Yeah, that seems to be the nuance highlighted. It confirms the claim itself.
Gotcha.
Another one, which shows a bit more enthusiasm, is exactly.
Oh, yeah. I like that one. It feels quite energetic.
Right, and the source note suggests it often implies, like, that's precisely what I was thinking.
A real sense of shared thought there.
And then for really strong agreement, the material points to, I couldn't agree more.
That definitely ramps it up. Signals you're completely, totally aligned.
It's a strong intensifier, yeah. Leaves no doubt.
And the last main one they listed.
Just the simple, you're right.
Which is similar to, that's true, I guess.
Similar, yeah, but maybe feels a touch more personal sometimes, like acknowledging the person is correct in their view.
Okay, that makes sense. And they gave examples, right, to see these in action.
They did. Like, if someone says something about English helping with jobs,
Right.
the source shows you could respond with, yes, I agree that English helps in getting better jobs, using that direct phrase.
Okay, straightforward application.
Or maybe someone makes a point and you use that more emphatic one. Exactly, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, you can really hear how that lands in a conversation. These examples help make it concrete.
Totally. They show how these aren't just, phrases on a list, but actual conversational tools.
So really, it's about having these different options handy, knowing these simple ways to agree, the ones the source material points out. It can make your communication feel clearer.
And more confident too, maybe. Especially when you genuinely share someone's view, it helps build that connection.
Even though they seem basic, understanding the slight differences like we just discussed adds a bit of finesse.
For sure, they're fundamental, but noticing those nuances, the source highlights, that boosts how effective they are.
Okay, so quick recap then. We've pulled out these specific phrases from the source material for polite agreement. I agree with you, that's true, exactly. I couldn't agree more, and you're right.
All useful tools right there from the sources we looked at. Practical stuff.
And remember, while we zoomed in on agreeing today.
This was part of a bigger picture in the sources, all about expressing opinions more broadly.
Right, which brings us to a final thought for you to maybe mull over.
Okay.
We've explored how these sources suggest you show agreement. But what about the other side of the coin? The equally vital skill of disagreeing respectfully.
Ah, yes. Or even just building on someone's idea, perhaps. Not just agreeing, but adding something new.
Exactly. How do you navigate those moments effectively? That wasn't the focus of this section, but it's definitely something to think about as you use these agreement phrases and continue building your communication skills.
Good point. Something to keep in mind as you go out and have those conversations. And something, absolutely crucial for just getting along with people. Expressing your opinion. Especially when, you don't quite see eye to eye with the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
We all have our perspectives, right? And sharing them it's how we connect. But let's be real, saying I disagree can sometimes feel really tricky.
Oh, definitely. Awkward, even confrontational sometimes.
Exactly. And there's that fear, isn't there? That fear of conflict, maybe, or just misunderstanding.
Right. It can make you clam up or maybe, come across a bit too strong. Neither's great for a good chat.
But the material we've been looking at, it really tackles this directly. It offers some actually surprisingly simple, practical ways to handle these moments.
Simple language strategies, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So the mission here is really to help you get those tools, to speak your mind confidently, clearly, but also, respectfully. Let's get into what the source suggests.
Well, what's interesting right off the bat is that the main point isn't really about changing minds or, winning.
Right. Not an argument.
No. The source says it's more fundamental. It's about keeping that connection, keeping the conversation going, even when you disagree. And the key is using, deliberate, polite language.
Yeah, deliberate is a good word. And the source gets specific, doesn't it, about how to do it. So instead of just blurting out, that's wrong.
Which just makes people defensive. Instantly.
Right. The material points that out clearly. It suggests softer ways in, just a simple, I'm not sure I totally agree with that.
Or, and this is a big one the source highlights, validating first.
Yeah.
Acknowledging their point before you offer yours.
Like saying, I can see your point, and...
Exactly. Or, that's an interesting way to look at it, however. That little bit of validation signals respect. And the source says that really lowers the other person's guard, makes them more receptive.
That validation thing, yeah, it's definitely stressed in the material, but there was that interesting bit about the word but, wasn't there?
Oh, right.
It sort of warns that if you say, I see your point, but it can almost cancel out the validation you just gave.
Yeah, it can feel like a dismissal. The source suggests maybe swapping but for and sometimes, or even just pausing.
Like, I see your point, take a beat. I actually have a slightly different take on it.
Exactly. It's subtle, but the material argues it makes a difference. It's not just the words, it's the whole structure, the delivery.
And another powerful tool mentioned is simply stating your own position clearly but neutrally.
Like, I have a different opinion on that.
Yeah. The source says that's really effective because it's just stating your reality. It's not judging theirs. You're claiming your view without attacking theirs.
It takes the confrontation out of it.
It does. And the examples they give are great. That movie won, right? Someone loves a film you thought was, well, not great.
Instead of, that movie was terrible.
Yeah. You just go, oh, interesting. You know, I actually have a different opinion on that one. Didn't quite land for me.
Simple. Or for something more serious, like a policy change discussion. You could say, I understand the points you're making about the benefits, and I also see some potential issues that make me lean another way.
It's not about being wishy-washy, is it? The source is clear on that.
Not at all. It's about being intentional, respectful in how you frame the difference.
So, pulling this all together, what's the big picture from the source? It seems to be that using these sort of linguistic tools changes the whole dynamic.
It shifts it away from that right versus wrong battleground.
Towards just an exchange, where different views can exist side by side without things getting heated.
Exactly. And the why is pretty clear in the material. This approach keeps the doors open. It keeps the conversation friendly, even when you fundamentally disagree.
It preserves the relationship, potentially.
Precisely. Disagreement is normal, right? Conflict doesn't have to be the outcome. By focusing on that respectful language, validating first, stating your view clearly, you make people feel heard.
Which makes it way more likely you can keep talking, keep working together, whatever it is.
It's not just about being nice. The source positions it as a smart communication strategy. Highly effective.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive up. The core message from the material seems really clear. Disagreeing doesn't need to equal conflict.
Not at all.
The key is being mindful, deliberate with your words, using specific phrases, specific structures to keep politeness front and center.
And the benefit, as the source shows, is keeping those conversations productive and, friendly.
It's a practical skill, really.
Definitely has real-world impact.
So here's something to think about based on all this. Cast your mind back to a recent chat where you had a different opinion. Maybe you didn't say anything, or maybe you did and it felt a bit off afterwards. How might using just one of these techniques we talked about, maybe that validation first, or simply saying, I have a different opinion, how might that have changed the feel of that conversation for you and for them?
It's worth considering.
Maybe give it a conscious try next time, see what happens.
Today, we're cutting straight to the core of something pretty practical.
Yeah, how to express your opinion in English.
Exactly. But more than that, how to do it with real, confidence and strength.
We've been looking at some materials, some sources that are really designed to give you the actual language tools for this.
Right. And the mission here for this deep dive, it's pretty clear, isn't it?
Absolutely. We want to equip you with phrases that will leave absolutely zero doubt about where you stand on something.
Because sometimes just saying, I think, it just doesn't cut it.
It really doesn't capture that conviction you might feel inside.
Okay, so let's really dig into what the source material gives us here. It sounds like it's not about subtle hints.
No, not at all. It gives you these direct declarations of certainty, ways to signal that strength very clearly.
So how does it suggest we do that? What are the tools?
Well, it highlights some really specific phrases, the kind that immediately tell your listener, okay, this person feels strongly or they're completely sure.
Yeah.
The ones the material really points to are things like, I'm certain that.
Strong start.
Yeah. And I strongly believe.
Okay, I can see that.
Also, there's no doubt in my mind.
Ooh, that's a good one. Very definitive.
And simply, without a doubt.
Those definitely land with more impact than just, I think or maybe.
Oh, absolutely. There's an immediate shift, isn't there, in perceived confidence.
Totally. Does the material give examples of how these work?
It does, yeah. Concrete examples. So take, I strongly believe.
Right.
The source uses this example. I strongly believe education should be free for everyone.
Right. And you can immediately hear the difference compared to just, I think education should be free.
Exactly. That phrase strongly believe just instantly conveys a level of commitment, conviction. The simple I think just can't match it.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how just adding one word like strongly or using a phrase like that completely changes the weight.
It really does.
And you mentioned another one the source calls out, something about saying it aloud.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. The material specifically notes this one is powerful when you actually say it out loud.
Makes sense.
The example given is, there's no doubt in my mind that speaking English opens doors.
Saying, there's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, it's not just the words. It carries this tone, this feeling of absolute certainty.
Right. And that's really what this material underscores, the strategic power of using specific language.
So it's not about complex grammar or anything.
Nope. These aren't complicated structures at all. It's about choosing these particular phrases to signal your certainty, your confidence.
Makes your opinion harder to just brush aside, I guess.
Precisely. They act almost like linguistic anchors for your conviction. Solidifies it.
Okay, so pulling this together for you, the listener, what does this all mean?
Well, it means you've got practical tools, things you can actually use, like right now.
If you want your opinion to come across as strong, certain, maybe even non-negotiable on a topic,
then the material shows us using these specific phrases is incredibly effective. It works.
it's not just having the opinion. It's about using the language to show the strength behind it.
Which brings us to a final thought, really. Something for you to consider.
Yeah.
If mastering these kinds of phrases helps you express your thoughts with, greater certainty, more impact, what new conversations, what opportunities, what doors might that clarity and confidence open up for you?
Interesting question. Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. This is where you give us the source material and we try to pull out the most valuable stuff for you quickly.
Exactly. And today, we're tackling something really practical, I think.
Yeah. What's that?
It's all about expressing yourself in English, specifically how you talk about what you like and, what you don't like.
Ah, okay. Likes and dislikes. And we've got a guide on this.
We do. A really helpful one, actually. It goes beyond the real basics.
Good. So our mission here.
Yeah.
Get you equipped, fast, with more ways to share how you feel about things.
And maybe understand why having those different options, that nuance, really matters in conversation.
Right. Because just saying I like it or I don't like it, it can sound a bit, I don't know.
Flat. Yeah.
Yeah, flat. It doesn't really get across the whole spectrum, does it?
Yeah.
From meh to I absolutely love this or get it away from me.
Precisely. And what's interesting, the source points out it's not just having more words, like synonyms. It's about matching the word, the phrase, to the intensity, the actual strength of your feeling. And that choice, it changes how people hear you.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk positives first. The source moves past just I like.
Right. It suggests, ramping things up. Phrases like I love or perhaps I really enjoy.
But there's a difference there, isn't there?
Yes, exactly. The source highlights that. I love reading. That sounds like a deep passion, right? Maybe core to who you are.
Like part of your identity.
Whereas I really enjoy reading puts the focus more on the pleasure, the good feeling you get while you're doing it.
So less identity, more experience in the moment.
Exactly. And that little difference, it's subtle, but it's quite powerful in communication.
Yeah, I can see that. And having that range helps you sound more genuine, maybe.
Absolutely. If you say, I love learning about space, and you truly mean it, that lands so differently than just a casual, oh, I like learning about space.
Definitely. Okay, so what about the other side? The dislikes. This is where it gets interesting, I bet.
It does. Because the source gives us a really good scale of intensity here. So it's not just, I don't like.
No. What else?
We get the strong stuff like, I can't stand, or even I hate.
Wow. Okay. Those are pretty forceful.
They are. And that kind of brings up a point the source touches on. When do you deploy those?
Right. You wouldn't say, I hate about slightly overcooked pasta, maybe? Or maybe you would.
Huh. Well, the implication is these are for things that genuinely, properly bother you, cause real frustration or negativity.
Like the example, I can't stand being stuck in traffic. That tells you way more about the feeling, the impatience, the frustration than just, I don't like traffic.
Exactly. But crucially, it's not all intense negativity. The source also gives us softer options.
Okay, like what?
Like I'm not a fan of, which is so useful.
Yeah, that feels gentler. for milder dislikes,
Yeah.
or maybe being polite.
Both. Think about that example they used. I'm not a fan of strict grammar rules, but I'm trying to follow them.
Right, compare that to I hate strict grammar rules. Very different vibe.
Totally. The first one, I'm not a fan of. It signals a preference, maybe a little difficulty, but it doesn't sound aggressive. It's almost like it shifts the focus to your relationship with the thing, not just the thing itself.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's less confrontational.
Exactly. I'm not a fan of is fantastic for expressing, a lack of enthusiasm or a mild dislike without making waves. Super handy in social settings or giving feedback gently. It allows for that nuance.
So pulling this all together, learning these different levels, love, enjoy, not a fan of, can't stand, it's not just about vocabulary lists.
No, not at all. It's about connection, really. When your words accurately mirror your feelings, you seem more authentic.
People get you better.
Yeah, and your personality comes through more clearly. You can navigate conversations better, disagree or show disinterest without causing offense unnecessarily.
So, the takeaway for you listening.
Well, having this range from love and really enjoy down to not a fan of, can't stand, and hate, it just gives you more power.
Power to be more precise, more authentic.
Exactly. In how you share what you like and don't like. It helps make your English feel, well, more like yours.
Okay, great. So, a final thought for you to chew on this week.
Yeah, maybe just this. Start listening for it. Pay attention to how people around you talk about their likes and dislikes. Do they always use strong words or do they vary it?
And then try it yourself.
Yeah. Pick just one or two phrases we talked about, maybe I really enjoy or I'm not a fan of. Something that caught your ear. And just try using it deliberately in a conversation.
See how it feels.
See how it feels, yeah. See if it feels different from what you normally say. And watch, does it change the interaction at all? What kind of, nuance could you express that maybe you couldn't before?
We grab sources you send us, and we really dig into them. Find those useful nuggets. Today, it's something pretty fundamental, actually. Expressing opinions confidently. In English.
Yeah, and our source material for this is, well, it's interesting because it's so simple, isn't it?
Totally. It's just a very short conversation snippet you shared with us. A few lines back and forth.
About online learning versus face-to-face classes.
Exactly. Seems really basic. But our mission, is to use this little exchange almost like a microscope.
Right. To look closely and see, okay, how are these opinions actually being shared? And discussed politely.
Yeah, what could it teach us about speaking our minds? With confidence, even when people see things differently.
And it's not about, big fancy vocabulary. It's more about the power in those simple everyday phrases, the building blocks.
What really jumps out at me looking at this is just how much strategy, communication strategy, is packed into normal language.
Definitely. Look how it starts, Amina says. I think online learning is more convenient.
Simple start, I think.
And John replies, yes, I agree. It saves time.
See, right there. Two classic, direct ways to put your view out there.
I think. Clearly flags it as your opinion. You're owning it.
And yes, I agree. That's not just being nice, is it?
No, it's strategic. Find that common ground first. Build a bit of rapport before going anywhere else.
Simple, clear, effective. They establish their views and a point of connection straight away.
Which brings us to that key moment in almost any discussion, right? How do you bring in a different angle?
Or qualify something.
Yeah.
Without sounding like you're just shooting the other person down.
Exactly. And the conversation goes on. Amina then says, but sometimes I miss face-to-face classes.
But sometimes.
And John's reply, that's true. I see your point.
Okay, this part. This is where it gets really interesting for this deep dive.
Yeah. Amina uses but sometimes. She isn't saying she was wrong about convenience.
No, she's adding nuance. Another layer to it.
Precisely. It shows a more complex view than just, for or against. It suggests sophisticated thinking, acknowledging trade-offs.
And John's response, that's true. I see your point.
Wow. That is so powerful. Maybe the biggest takeaway from this tiny chat.
Because he doesn't necessarily say, oh, I agree, I missed them too.
No, he says, that's true. Acknowledging her feeling or the observation has validity.
Right.
And then crucially, I see your point. That phrase. It's like a communication superpower.
How so?
Well, it tells the other person you've listened, you've processed what they said, and you validate their right to feel that way or see it that way, even if you don't entirely share the view yourself.
So it kind of disarms potential conflict, keeps the door open.
Exactly. It's not about forcing agreement. It's about respect for their perspective.
Okay. So bringing this all together, what does this mean for you listening when you want to state your opinion confidently?
Well, the snippet really shows you don't need, like, complex structures or loud declarations.
Right. Confidence in communication, especially with opinions, seems to come from having the right tools to just navigate the chat itself.
Think of those simple phrases as your essential kit. I think. State your view clearly. Own it.
I agree. To build that connection.
Using but, or sometimes, to add that nuance, show your thinking in layers.
And maybe the most powerful one, I see your point.
Yeah, to show you're listening, you're validating them, and you're managing disagreement, well, constructively.
These basic building blocks right there in that simple chat, they're what really give you the confidence.
Confidence to participate effectively. Because you can state your view and engage respectfully with others, manage the flow, even with different ideas around.
It makes sense. Confidence isn't just about saying your piece. It's how you position yourself in the conversation.
And how you handle what others bring. These phrases are the levers for doing that smoothly, respectfully.
Absolutely. So to kind of wrap up this deep dive,
the key takeaway really is that confidence in expressing opinions relies on using simple strategic phrases.
like, I think adding nuance with, but validating with, I see your point. They're powerful tools.
For stating your view and for engaging respectfully with others, they build the scaffold you need to feel secure joining in.
Because you know how to put your ideas out there and respond to others, keeping things productive.
Right. And maybe here's a final thought for you to mull over, building on that validation point.
Okay.
How does just saying, I see your point, actually shift the whole energy of a discussion, even when you don't fully agree?
What does that acknowledgement do to the other person?
Yeah.
And to the chance for more talk?
Yeah. Something to think about next time you're sharing an opinion.
Jumping into a topic that feels really essential now. How do you express your opinions confidently?
Especially when you're talking with people from, different cultural backgrounds.
Exactly. We've got some source material here, and it's focused specifically on sharing opinions in global communication, particularly global English. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to pull out the sharpest, most useful insights from these notes.
The kind of actionable things.
Yeah, the nuggets that can genuinely help you navigate those conversations, well, effectively and respectfully, wherever you are in the world.
It's such a common thing, isn't it? That feeling of uncertainty.
Totally. Like, how direct should I be? Am I going to come across wrong? Because communication styles just vary so much.
Yeah.
As we unpack this, maybe think about a time you've faced that challenge yourself.
And that's exactly why this is so important, right? That experience you just thought of. Global English often acts as this bridge language.
Right, between people who don't share a first language, maybe.
Precisely. Or just across diverse backgrounds. And it needs a certain kind of care when you're sharing your views, understanding how to share an opinion or even how to disagree respectfully. It isn't just about, basic politeness.
More fundamental.
Yeah, I think so. It's really fundamental to clear understanding, to building trust, and actually enabling real collaboration across those international lines. It's a crucial skill today.
Okay, so let's unpack what the source material actually points to.
Yeah.
It seems surprisingly focused, quite practical, really zeroing in on key actions for these global opinion sharing moments.
Yeah, and what's striking is that while these points might look simple on the surface, they're foundational. They really are.
Because they counteract common pitfalls.
Exactly. Pitfalls that pop up when different cultural communication norms collide. They're aiming for a universally sort of readable signal of respect.
Right, so it's less about complicated linguistic theory and more about, conscious interpersonal actions. The first key thing the source highlights is just be polite.
And, be polite sounds obvious, doesn't it?
Yeah, a bit basic, maybe.
But its function in global English is critical. Politeness here acts almost like a universal solvent.
Solvent, how so?
Well, it smooths over potential friction points. Things caused by different levels of directness or cultural expectations about hierarchy,
Ah, okay.
It just signals that you value the relationship and the conversation itself, regardless of the exact words being used.
That makes sense. And building on that idea, respecting the interaction, the source is pretty clear. Don't interrupt. But hang on, isn't interrupting sometimes seen as, active listening or engagement in some cultures?
That's an excellent point. And yes, you're right. In some contexts, overlapping speech does signify enthusiasm.
Right.
But in a global English setting, which often lacks those shared nonverbal cues we rely on, or maybe defaults to a turn-taking structure common elsewhere, interrupting can easily get misinterpreted.
As aggressive, maybe,
Nah.
or dismissive.
Exactly. So sticking to a one speaker at a time approach, which this source implies, creates a more universally understood kind of safe space.
Where everyone feels they'll get their turn.
Yeah, their complete turn to speak and be heard. It just manages the conversational flow to be more inclusive, really.
Okay, got it. Ensuring everyone gets space is inherently respectful. The material also stresses using kind words when you disagree. This isn't just about, softening the blow, is it?
No, I think it's more strategic than just that. Disagreement can feel quite personal, can it?
Definitely.
Especially across cultural divides where maybe intentions are harder to read. So using kind words, things like, I see your point, and I also wonder about, or maybe that's a valid perspective, my experience has been slightly different.
Right.
It frames the disagreement differently, not as a conflict between people, but more like a difference in ideas that you're exploring together.
Ah, I see. So you can still stand firm on your opinion.
Absolutely. While respecting the other person's view, it keeps the dialogue collaborative, not confrontational.
It's about preserving the relationship, then, and the possibility of future understanding, even when you disagree right now.
Precisely.
Okay, the final piece of advice from the source. Avoid sounding too aggressive. Where do people typically cross that line, maybe without even intending to?
Well, aggression can show up in lots of ways, can't it? Overly forceful tone, maybe? Using absolute language like, this is the only way, or dismissive phrases.
That's clearly wrong.
Exactly. The source highlights avoiding this because, much like interrupting, the perception of aggression varies wildly.
So what feels like just being firm in one culture?
Might feel like a personal attack in another. So in global English, a calm, measured tone, even when you're asserting a strong view, is probably the most reliable way to ensure your message gets considered on its own merit.
Instead of being rejected just because the delivery felt hostile.
Right. It keeps the door open for the other person to actually hear you.
It's fascinating how these actions, which seem quite simple, are actually pretty powerful tools for navigating all this complexity. So, pulling these threads together, being polite, not interrupting, using kind words when disagreeing, and avoiding sounding too aggressive. The source material explicitly says applying these is key to, and I quote, building respect in global conversations.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, these actions cultivate what's sometimes called psychological safety in communication.
Psychological safety, meaning?
Meaning they signal it's safe for you to share your ideas with me, even if we see things differently. When that safety exists, people are just far more likely to engage authentically, aren't they?
Right. They'll share diverse perspectives more openly.
And work towards mutual understanding instead of just getting defensive or shutting down. It transforms potential confrontation into hopefully productive exchange.
Which is the bedrock of effective global collaboration, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. It seems pretty clear that applying these, relatively simple points, but being mindful of why they matter globally, can really improve your ability to communicate clearly.
Ensuring your opinions are heard respectfully.
And building stronger, more meaningful connections across cultures.
Yeah.
It's less about winning an argument, maybe,
Yeah, much less.
and more about building bridges through understanding.
So let me ask you this, and maybe ask our listeners too. What stands out to you from these points? If intentionally applying these tips builds respect and that psychological safety, what does that suggest about the kind of relationships you can build globally? Relationships that go beyond just, swapping ideas. And maybe think about this too. How does actively focusing on speaking this way potentially change how you approach listening in these same global interactions? Something to consider.
Okay, let's jump in. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We're the place, where we try to cut through all the noise, get right to the useful stuff from the material you share with us.
Yeah, cutting through the clutter.
Exactly. So, today, you've given us some source material focused on expressing opinions in English.
Right, a list of phrases, some advice too.
Yeah, key phrases. So our mission really is to unpack those specific examples.
Figure out how they work.
And how you can use them, confidently. Speak your mind.
It sounds simple, expressing an opinion, but it's actually quite nuanced. The examples you sent over really show that, how subtle framing can be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crucial, like you said, for clear communication.
Definitely.
So the material lists 5 phrases. Let's just lay them out.
Okay.
We've got, in my opinion, learning languages is important. Then, I agree that traveling is educational. Then, I have a different view on that topic. Also, I'm not a fan of long meetings.
Relatable.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And finally, I strongly believe everyone can learn English.
Mhm.
So just looking at that list, quite a range.
That's the thing. It's not just one flavor of opinion. It's a whole spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You go from just sort of neutrally introducing your thought with, in my opinion,
Right.
to reacting, like with, I agree,
Right.
then offering a polite disagreement, that different view one,
Yeah.
expressing something casual, like I'm not a fan, and then bam, that really strong conviction with, I strongly believe.
Let's dig into each one a bit. In my opinion, why start that way? Why not just state it?
Good question. I think using, in my opinion, it clearly flags what's coming as subjective, your take. It's useful maybe in more formal chats or debates, or when you're talking about something that isn't, a hard fact.
So it sets the stage, like this is just me thinking.
Exactly. Kind of manages expectations, shows it's subjective.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I agree. That one feels different, more interactive.
Totally interactive. I agree. It's all about connection, right? Building rapport. You're validating what the other person said, shows you're listening, you're on the same page, finding that common ground.
Simple. But yeah, powerful for showing you're tracking the conversation.
Yeah, alignment.
Okay, so if I agree as alignment, what about the opposite? The source gives us, I have a different view on that topic. How's that different from just, I disagree?
Well, I have a different view. It's much softer, isn't it? Less confrontational.
Yeah, it feels less like picking a fight.
Right. It frames it as just an alternative perspective. It kind of invites discussion, maybe. Doesn't just shut the door like a flat I disagree sometimes can.
Respectful disagreement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It respects their view, but clearly signals yours is different. Then you can explain why.
Okay. And I'm not a fan of? That sounds really casual.
Oh, yeah. Super common. You'll hear that everywhere. Informal chats.
Like about movies, food.
Movies, food, activities. Yeah, even work stuff, like the long meetings example. Perfect for expressing like a mild dislike.
Not world ending, just not your thing.
Precisely. It's personal taste, not a big judgment call. It's not saying it's bad, just not for you.
Got it. A gentle way to express dissatisfaction. Okay, last one. I strongly believe. That one sounds significant.
Oh, it definitely carries weight. You use I strongly believe for things you feel deeply about. Core convictions, values, things you see as truth.
So it signals real certainty, passion, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. You're telling people, look, this opinion is really fundamental to me.
Powerful stuff.
It is, but you probably wouldn't use it lightly.
Right.
Use it too much and it loses its punch. Or you might sound a bit rigid.
Good point. So these 5 phrases then from the source material, they give you this really practical toolkit.
Yeah, a toolkit. I like that.
Ways to introduce a thought, agree, disagree politely, state a preference, declare something you feel strongly about.
And the source says, practice them. Use them in real conversations.
Which makes sense. Practice is key.
And if you think bigger picture, mastering these, it's not just about adding words to your vocabulary.
No.
It's about controlling how you come across, how you're perceived when you share your thoughts. Each phrase sends a slightly different signal.
About your stance, your attitude.
Your willingness to engage, yeah. Choosing the right one gives you more nuanced interaction.
So you can kind of shape the conversation. Sound formal or agreeable or gently challenging or casual or really passionate.
Precisely. It's expressing yourself accurately and appropriately. Matching the phrase to the context, to your intention.
So wrapping this up, what does this mean for you listening? Well, it means these specific phrases aren't just abstract grammar points.
No, they're practical tools.
Yeah, tools to fine-tune how you communicate. They help you navigate different situations, different relationships, by giving you clear ways to voice what's going on inside.
So just to recap this deep dive, we looked at those examples. In my opinion, I agree. I have a different view. I'm not a fan, and I strongly believe.
The whole spectrum.
Yeah, a valuable spectrum of ways to share what you think. Using them thoughtfully really helps you communicate clearly and connect better.
So maybe something to think about as you go about your day. How does consciously choosing which way you phrase your opinion actually change things? Not just what you say, but how people hear it and what kind of conversation happens next. Something to mull over.
That's it for episode 41, Expressing Opinions in English. We talked about phrases to share opinions, how to agree and disagree politely, how to make your opinion stronger, global tips for respectful discussions. Next time in episode 44, we'll learn how to make requests and offers in English, like, can you help me, would you like? Or, shall I? Until then, keep speaking, keep learning, and keep believing in your voice. This is your host from SpeakNest English Podcast Zone signing off. Take care and see you next time.